When I was in the seminary, a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I participated in 2 interfaith seminarian weekends. A group of students from Jewish, Christian, Muslim, and other seminaries came together for a weekend to discuss our faith traditions and what they meant to us. And I remember one woman in particular who was studying at Yale Divinity School. She had spent a year in Israel, and she was so impressed with Jewish culture and traditions, building booths and eating in them for Sukkot, waving the lulav and etrog for 7 days, having a Seder for Passover, and eating special foods for a whole week. The all-night study on Shavuot, culminating in a literal pilgrimage from all parts of the city of Jerusalem up to the Old City and the Western Wall for morning services at dawn. Commemorating Yom HaShoah, the Holocaust Memorial Day, 1 week, and then the following week, Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut, Memorial Day for Israel, followed immediately by Independence Day. The celebration and commemoration of these various holidays was rich in symbolism and meaning, but she was especially impressed by the weekly Jewish holiday of Shabbat. In Jerusalem, the city more or less shut down completely for 25 hours. She had been invited to Shabbat dinners many times, at which the Shabbat candles were placed in beautiful candle holders and lit. Special prayers are chanted for wine and bread, washing hands before eating, engaging in wide-ranging conversation with other guests about politics, art, the Torah portion, or whatever, and then singing special Shabbat songs, and concluding with Birkat HaMazon, the grace after the meals. The Passover Seder is an elaborately orchestrated ritual meal that is the most celebrated home ritual in Jewish homes around the world. But every week, we have an opportunity to do something somewhat less elaborate, a Seder for Shabbat, a structured meal with family and guests at which we do some rituals to begin the meal and some rituals to conclude it. One of the early Zionist leaders and thinkers was a man named Ashertsv Hirsch Grinsberg. Grinsberg lived from 1856 to 1927. He was not a particularly religious Jew, but he was immersed in Jewish literature and Jewish culture. In fact, he's considered the founder of what was later called cultural Zionism. He believed that Jews needed their own state in which they were the majority of the population in order for Jewish culture to fully thrive and flourish. He's more popularly known by his pen name, which was Ahad Ha'am, one of the people. Now, I give you this background about him so that we can better appreciate something that he said about Shabbat. Here's what he wrote. A Jew who feels a real tie with the life of our people throughout the generations will find it utterly impossible to think of the existence of the Jew without the Shabbat. One can say without exaggeration that more than the Jew has kept the Shabbat has kept the Jew. So the first thing to note about this remarkable statement is that Ahad Ha'am was not a religious Jew. He may not have observed the Sabbath in all of its particulars, yet he was keenly aware of the crucial importance of recognizing the Sabbath for the preservation of the Jewish people and Jewish culture. More than Jews keeping the Sabbath has kept the Jewish people alive with our own distinctive identity and community. It's no wonder, then, that in this morning's Torah portion, Kedoshim, right after God says, Kedoshim tihiyu ki kadosh ani Adonai Elohechem, right after God says, you shall be holy because I, the eternal, your God, am holy, right after he says that, he begins with 2 specific commandments. Revere your mother and father, and keep my Sabbaths. Yes, the Torah portion goes on to list dozens of other commandments, many of which are profound ethical principles, including perhaps the most important one, love your neighbor as yourself. But God doesn't lead off with that commandment. God begins with revere your parents and keep the Sabbath. Now, I'll leave the discussion about revering your parents for another day because this morning I want to talk about the significance of why God chose the Sabbath to be one of these 2 headliners for the Torah portion that commands us to behave in a way that is holy. By the way, as has been said already today, When God says, "You shall be holy," that is not a statement of fact. That is not God saying, "Oh, you guys, definitely, you got it. You're going to be a holy people." There's nothing inherently holy about the Israelites. In fact, reading the Torah, you can see that they do not always live up to that description. They do not always rise to that challenge. This is not a prediction by God about our future. You are surely going to be a holy people. Rather, God is commanding us to be holy. This is like a drill sergeant who's barking an order. Or maybe it's like a loving parent who's trying to teach us to live a good and holy life. A good life, a life of meaning, a life that honors and respects our Creator and cares for all of God's creation. So what does it mean to be holy? First and foremost, the Bible scholars tell us to be holy is to be set apart from the ordinary, to be different. But since God is the ultimate in holiness, the term also implies an elevated status. Our Eitz Chaim commentary suggests that to be holy is to partake in some measure of those special qualities of God. Holiness is the highest level of human behavior, human beings at their most godlike. So in what way does the observance of the Sabbath help us to become a holy people? First, of course, by doing our creative human work 6 days a week and then resting on the seventh, we're imitating the description of God's creation in Genesis. God was busy doing God's creative work 6 days of the week and then stopped on the Sabbath and said, this what I've created, this is very good. On the Sabbath, God stopped, it would seem, to enjoy the universe and to take pleasure in existence just the way it was. So too, we are to take God's gifts to us, the created world, and through our own human creative efforts, hopefully turn it into something even better. To take the wheat and turn it into bread, to take the flax and turn it into cloth, to take the mud and turn it into bricks. 6 days, God actually commands us to do this creative work. That's part of the commandment to observe the Sabbath. 6 days you shall do your labor. And then, like God, we rest on the seventh day and just enjoy the world the way it is. We're to stop trying to fix it, stop trying to manipulate it to suit our personal comforts. Just relax and enjoy. We're thus imitating God's divine pattern, which is a kind of holiness. But more than that, in Genesis, God proclaimed that the Sabbath day was a holy day. Vayivarach Elohim et yom hashvi'i vayikadeshoto. God blessed the Sabbath day and he declared it holy. And as Heschel famously put it, the first thing that is declared holy in the created universe is not an object in space, it's a moment in time. Specifically the Sabbath day. Making the Sabbath distinct and separate from the rest of the week elevates its status. It thus makes the Sabbath a holy day, and when we recognize the Sabbath as a holy day every week, we are at the same time distinguishing ourselves, elevating our own lives and the spirit of our community. The more we do to recognize the weekly gift of holiness, the more our own lives will be enriched and the stronger our sense of community. And that is what Echad Ha'am was trying to say. Our keeping the Sabbath has preserved our sense of Jewish identity as a minority community in all the countries of the diaspora. Having experienced the pandemic over the past couple of years, I think we can all appreciate so much more the blessing of the Sabbath now. We have come back to Beth Yeshurun to celebrate the Sabbath as a community. Watching it at home is okay for those who are not able to join together in person, but being here and seeing each other face to face is unquestionably a spiritually uplifting and inspiring experience. Another very important aspect of observing the Sabbath are the home rituals of a Shabbat dinner that my seminary friend enjoyed so much. Lighting candles, saying Kiddush over wine or grape juice, saying Hamotzi over challah, blessing our children, and singing Birkat HaMazon, the grace after the meals. Just having an enriching conversation with family and friends around a table. Diane and I have started to invite guests again to our Shabbat table, and I have to say, it is so wonderful to be able to do that again. We had been Zooming a Shabbat dinner with friends and family, just so that we're not alone by ourselves for dinner. But it's just not the same as having guests live and in person around a table. Studying a Jewish text on a Saturday afternoon is yet another Shabbat ritual. And while we can read a book by ourselves, the Jewish traditional method of study is with a partner or in a group. And thankfully, we can do that again as well. One thing that we may continue to do by Zoom, at least once in a while, is Havdalah, the short ceremony that concludes the Sabbath. It's more fun to do it with others, but it's not always convenient to walk or drive somewhere to do it together. So marking the end of the Sabbath in this way adds holiness, even if we do it using modern technology. As we are finally able to congregate together in groups, I hope we'll all consider doing many of the things to reinvigorate the holiness of the Sabbath in our post-pandemic world. The more we do to make the Sabbath holy, the more we will bring holiness into our lives and our community. Surely now, we can more fully appreciate doing these rituals together as a community here at Beth Yeshurun. One of my favorite stories about the power of Shabbat is this. A great pianist was once asked by an ardent admirer, "How do you handle the notes as well as you do?" And the artist answered, "The notes? I don't handle those any differently than other pianists. But the pauses between the notes, that is where the art resides." In great living, as in great music, the story concludes, the art may be in the pauses. Surely one of the enduring contributions which Judaism has made to the art of living is the Shabbat, the pause between the notes. And it is to the Shabbat that we must look if we're to restore our lives the sense of serenity and sanctity, which Shabbat offers in such joyous abundance. You shall be holy, God commands us in this morning's portion, and then he commands us to be holy by observing the holiness of Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.